Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to auscastnetwork.com for details.
In a world where everyone says hello,
they dare to say,
g'day.
Yeah, g'day.
Yeah, good day.
Yeah, g'day. Yes. Good day. Yeah. G'day. Yeah. G'day. Yeah. Yeah. Good day.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
Good day.
G'day. Hey. Yeah. G'day. Yeah. G'day, Tim.
Yeah, g'day, Leon.
Yeah. G'day, everyone.
Yeah, g'day, everyone.
Welcome to Yeah G'day, the complete guide to Australia with Tim and Leon.
That's us, Tim and Leon.
Always on time.
Every single time.
Always prompt.
Yeah, no, we don't. It's, you can't tell how busy we are by the scheduling of the podcast episode. You can't figure it out.
You know what I realised the other day? For all you fucking naysayers out there, I'm taking this down for the beginning of the episode. We've never missed a week, I don't think. Including you going to Japan.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So we don't miss weeks, it's just sometimes it's later than ideal. This week, brought to you by real estate agents at previous addresses being less than ideal.
Yep.
Busy schedule due to end of year. And as you can tell from my extra dulcet tones, something's going on with my throat, and I can't hear out of my right ear right now. So Tim's whispering in my left.
Yes.
It's very
Very
sensual.
close. It's a time of year, and everything that can be happening right now is fucking happening, isn't it? So
Yeah. And as you know, this podcast is a platform for Tim and I to complain about
Oh,
our...
absolutely.
What's the thing in The Simpsons where it's like, old man
yells at cloud. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much how this is.
You are the cloud.
We literally started this just to have a public forum to air our grievances about the world.
Well, that's not entirely untrue.
No, it's actually pretty accurate.
But Tim, we've had an eventful time. We created I started, and then you and Elise gave input to the Yeager Day playlist on Spotify.
Yeah.
It's a
getting
fucking
music
banger.
Going. It goes all right.
I was listening to it on the weekend. There's some bangers in there.
Yeah.
I had a good time in the car. Elise, less than pleased.
Yeah. She wants you to drive, pay attention to the road.
Oh, yeah, I was swerving all over
yeah.
the shop.
Yeah, no, there's some good stuff on there. Some Australian artists. They're a
Well,
talented bunch, aren't they?
There's a lot of Australian music on there, and Australian artists are talented. And the best thing that's come out of doing that playlist is both yourself, Elise, and Bree Weeks at one point have all said, I didn't know that person was Australian.
Yeah.
So
There are
Bree
a
was
couple.
like, I think Savage Garden. I think Elise said it about Stevie Wright and about Living End and about Faker.
The Living End was one I didn't realise was Australian, yeah.
Faker's a big one as well, because Faker are kind of
Yeah.
a bit more obscure. But like that's the best part about this playlist is I feel like a lot of people will listen to it and go, oh, I think the big ones for maybe some people overseas will be Iggy Azalea and Sia.
Yeah.
There's some big ones.
The one we're talking about today, I actually didn't know was Australian for a long time. Now I do. It makes
really?
sense.
Oh.
Yeah. And I feel like, they're more recent years, and they became quite popular internationally. Maybe they weren't so much associated with Australia in the same way that others were,
No, and
I guess.
obviously, like now that Tim and I are here with the podcast, we're back in black. We're Dynamite.
I'm not wearing black at all, actually.
We're TNT. We're Thunderstruck.
Let me tell you, after this week, I am on a highway to hell, my friends.
And then I'm going to shake Tim all night long. We're talking about AC/DC.
I see Akadaka, as
Akadaka.
we here in Australia call them.
Akadaka.
Yes, ACDC. I have something of a history of the ACDC. How they came to be, their big moments. I'd like to
little
share it
moments.
with you.
Please do. I'll chip in where I can.
Yeah, no, please. Yeah, you probably have better knowledge of them than I do. So
I have some knowledge.
Indeed. So it all starts way back when the brothers Malcolm, Angus, and George Young, they were born in Glasgow, Scotland, living... I don't know why I have this specific address, but they did live in Scotland. I'm not going to read out their address. That seems unnecessary.
Go to their house.
There was the big freeze in 1963, which was the worst winter on record for Scotland. They had 8 feet deep snow.
That's a lot of feet.
That's a lot of feet.
It's at least 8.
At least it's between 8 and 8.
8.
There was a TV advertisement at the time which advised travel for families to a different life in Australia. I know in the 60s, they were like really heavily pushing
I didn't know that.
migration in Australia because we had various projects and stuff going
How
on.
times have changed.
Indeed. So 15 members of the young family came by late June 1963, so they acted pretty fast.
You got it.
Obviously, winter being earlier in the year. They originally stayed in like a little villa wood migrant hostel, and then they ended up living in Burwood in Sydney
Oh, okay.
for a bit. George was first learned to play guitar, and he actually ended up being a member of the Easy Beats, which is a very successful Australian band in the 1960s.
Friday on my mind.
Yes, absolutely. And then Malcolm ended up following in George's footsteps, playing with a Newcastle band called the Velvet Underground, not the one that everyone would think of.
Yeah, I was going to say, are they Australian?
Yeah, these guys were older and they were Australian, but not the one that everyone would be thinking of.
How strange.
Eventually they, all were developing their talents and playing in various different bands. They developed the idea for AC/DC, the name, off seeing their sister Margaret's had a sewing machine. It had the initial AC/DC, which of course is an electrical alternating current, direct current reference. And I don't know, they felt like the name symbolized the raw power.
The raw high voltage rock and roll.
The rock and roll style that they were going for. So in 1973, Malcolm and Angus formed AC/DC. They recruited a bassist, Larry Van Creet, a vocalist by the name of Dave Evans, and Colin Burgess, who was an ex-Masters Apprentices drummer.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that band, but
Dad's a big fan of Master Apprentices.
yeah, so he was one of
Master
the
Apprentices,
ex-drummers. At that time, Angus Young was already wearing his schoolboy outfit, which he's very famous for.
Iconic.
Which was actually another idea of his sister Margaret's.
Margaret's in it.
Yeah. Angus had previously to this tried Spider-Man outfit, a Zorro outfit, a gorilla, a parody of Superman. That was it. And also the band was going for like a very glam rock look at this particular time.
Oh.
And even their sound apparently was quite glam rock. But that didn't end up
That didn't
being...
stick.
Yeah, that didn't really stick. They decided to abandon that because there was already a Melbourne-based band called Skyhooks, which I'm sure people have heard of as well.
I was planning on talking about them this episode, but they are lesser known for our first foray into bands.
Yeah, they are lesser known. They're probably reasonably well known around Australia, and they are,
Very good.
they're that glam rock.
Catsuits.
So they ended up kind of diverting, going a little bit heavier. They're not heavy metal. Ooh, that's a bit of a debate, isn't it?
No.
Some people do refer to them as heavy metal. They just refer to
heavy
themselves as rock and roll.
Yeah.
Or just rock music.
Yeah, probably not even heavy rock. Yeah, they are just rock.
Yeah.
Comparatively.
So it was about that time in September of 1974, they decided, or their manager at the time, and they had discussions, what they weren't going to go with glam rock style. Their singer at the time, Dave Evans, is that what I said? Yeah, Dave Evans. The harder rock style that they wanted to go for, his voice didn't suit it.
Not for Dave.
Yeah. So they ended up...
Who would they get?
They
Who could they
ended up-
possibly get?
They ended up meeting an absolute legend, Bon Scott. Ronald Belford Bon Scott, who was a vocalist and a friend of George's already. He was recommended by Vince Lovegrove.
I don't know.
I don't think I mentioned his name previously. So.
No.
But the thing is that Scott was actually working as chauffeur for the band at the time.
Huh.
When they made this decision, and then he auditioned and ended up being the lead singer and becoming extraordinarily
His own chauffeur.
famous. Yeah.
I don't know if I've read either most of, or possibly twice. I can't remember what the number is. Of the Bon Scott or a Bon Scott biography.
Okay.
When I was a younger boy. I don't know if that was in there. I feel like it was a good enough biography.
Yeah. Did it mention he also immigrated with his family from Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
But they immigrated to Western Australia to Fremantle originally.
Yeah, the thing about AC/DC / all Australian musicians, pretty much most of them are from England or Scotland or Ireland or something
Yeah.
originally because
They
of the migration.
The band started here.
Well,
we take that ownership.
That's what I said when I was questioning about Crowded House. Is like the Finn brothers are definitely from New Zealand, but it was formed in Melbourne and it had one or two other members that were Australian. So we got claim to it. But yeah, so Bon Scott is the iconic frontman for AC/DC.
Yeah, and they'd already been recording kind of an EP or an album at the time, or a single, with Evans called "Can I Sit Next to You, Girl" / "Rock in the Parlour." They ended up rewriting some of it and then re-recording it just as "Can I Sit Next to You, Girl," which is a reasonably well-known song-ish. It's probably not in their top.
I don't know if
catalog.
I know it, but
yeah. Anyway, by October 1974, they had done High Voltage, which was, I think, as far as I understand, that was like their first big album. They did it in 10 days, and it was based on instrumental songs that the Young brothers had already written, and then Bon Scott went and wrote lyrics over the top of it. And it's that time that like the bass, like the lineup stabilized. So it was Bon Scott, the Young brothers, a bassist by the name of Mark Evans, and a drummer, Phil Rudd.
Well, I wonder if Mark Evans was related to the other guy, the singer. Didn't you say Dave Evans was the singer originally?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know that.
It's a whole brotherly thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So there we go. The lineup is solid. AC/DC is there.
So they had High Voltage, and
Let
then
There Be
also
Rock.
later that year they released the single "It's a Long Way to the Top," which is a very famous song.
A long way to the shop if you want a sausage roll.
Oh, isn't it, mate? Between 1974 and 1977, they became more and more famous because they were on Molly Meldrum's Countdown.
The place
a
to
lot.
be.
Yeah, which was like the place to be for Australian musicians at that time.
Is that where they debuted both of them in the school uniforms? So Angus did the school uniform for like, as far as I can tell, forever, as you've just said. But I think it was on Countdown. Bon Scott joined in, but he dressed as in a girls' school uniform.
I'm not really sure, to be honest.
Yeah, so
I don't know that part.
I don't know if that was a debut of Countdown, but at some point, Bon and Angus were both in matching school outfits, but Bon was dressed as a girl. And I think there's definitely a time... See, I'm racking my brain because this is from a long time ago that I would have looked into AC/DC.
Yeah.
I feel like it was either that time or there was a time when Bon wore a kilt or something on stage and he had like fluffy balls hanging out at the bottom of it or something.
I feel like I can vaguely remember a reference to that as well, actually, yeah.
Bon was a bit of a larrikin.
He was
wasn't
a larrikin. Yeah, no, he was a bloody larrikin, wasn't he?
Larrikin.
And their performance on Countdown, weirdly, even though they become more and more famous after this, on 3rd of April 1977 was their last TV appearance for like 20 years.
Jesus. So
for some reason, even like as they got more famous, they were seen on TV less.
I guess
which
they were
is
touring
weird. So it's like 1976 that they start to become
big,
more famous in an international sense. So the first album they released internationally was like a compilation CD of stuff from High Voltage and TNT, which they'd also, I believe, recorded by this point or were recording at this point. And that was just titled High Voltage. Then they'd released Dirty Deeds.
Don't cheap.
Yeah, and they released 2 different versions of the album, or a couple of different versions of the album. So it depended, like the tracks on it actually depend where you get it.
Oh, okay.
So there's an Australian version and an international version.
That's always a bit of fun.
Yeah. Then they were touring Europe for a fair bit after that. It's like around this time that they cited as a pretty heavy influence for a lot of British new wave rock bands around that time period. And it was during this then they ended up coming back and they recorded Let There Be Rock, which is another album.
Like that. Now the song Let There Be Rock is one that I am not hugely familiar with, but whenever Foo Fighters play, or a lot of bands, whenever they play an AC/DC song at their concert, they seem to do Let There Be Rock.
Let There Be Rock, yeah.
Which is like, it's very punchy, high impact in that. And I know that I think what Foo Fighters started doing it as a tribute to Malcolm. So
yeah,
like they were playing at all their concerts. But yeah, when I saw them play, they did Let There Be Rock. And like, as I said, it's just like an AC/DC song that I'm not familiar with. but it seems to be the one that people cover. Anyway, that's just a side note.
Yeah. In early 77, after they'd done all that, they went back to Britain. They began a European tour with Black Sabbath, which was an enormous big deal at the time. Apparently, Bon Scott and Ozzy Osbourne got on like very, very well.
Yeah.
Became very fast friends, but apparently between the rest of the members of both bands, things were not
great,
spectacular.
Right.
There's one incident they talk about where Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath pulled a knife on Malcolm Young. But it was like one of those flick comb knife sort of things. So I don't think
the leads were getting on, but the band were like, fuck off.
To be fair, can you imagine touring with Ozzy Osbourne at that time? Like, it would just be a fucking mess.
Oh yeah, I feel like it would have been an interesting time in music, and like I don't know what the camaraderie was like back then, because they were competing. Like, you know, AC/DC and Black Sabbath were competing with each other to be the better band.
Be the better band, yeah. And then later towards the end of 1977, Mark Evans, who was the bassist, ended up being fired from the band because they wanted someone who was able to sing backup vocals. I don't think he was much of a singer. He was replaced by Cliff Williams, who's with the band for a fair while after this, I think.
Sure.
Okay, and then, so by 75, so up until this point, they were quite popular in Australia, very popular in Britain, but they hadn't really cracked the US at this point. So by 75, they start getting played on US stations. I had the name of the station. It was like this really random Milwaukee station or something like this that were first played on, but they kind of made it really big with Highway to Hell.
Good song.
Yeah.
Good tune.
Because I read that the part of the reason was up until this point, and I think it's kind of an Australian-British thing, and that's why they were so successful, their songs were kind of a bit, like they were rocky, but there was a little bit of silliness about it.
Yeah, kind
but
of
with
like
Highway to Hell, they just went like full rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember how Highway to Hell starts.
Living easy.
Yeah. Oh, that's the one they do in... Oh, no. They do Long Way to the Top in... Is that Long Way to the Top, though?
I think I may have just... I don't know.
So the thing about
really
AC/DC is that we were singing their praise, but yeah, the songs all sound the same. Because when I was trying to think of Highway to Hell, my head was initially going to You Shook Me All Night Long, and then I got into some TNT, and then I think I was somewhere in Thunderstruck. Listen to it for yourself.
Yeah. Go on and listen.
Right.
So Highway to Hell was a big break. They ended up reaching number 17 on the US Top 100 list.
That's a pretty big deal.
And that propelled them immediately. As soon as that song came out, I guess people started listening to their back catalogue, immediately propelled them to being one of the top rock groups in the entire world.
Unfortunately, what we find in music a lot is that you need to claim the American audience to claim the world.
Pretty much.
Because
if you get America, you get enough publicity around the rest of the world that you to do whatever you want.
Well, like if you claim America, you claim more than the population of Australia anyway. So you could be famous in every single household in Australia, but that's still not the same numbers wise as if you hit America or England on that. Yeah. So unfortunately, AC/DC were big, as you say, in Australia and England, but they didn't really hit full rocketing success until they had that final piece of the puzzle.
So about 75, between 75 and 79 is like when they started to work on it. But Highway to Hell was 79. That's when they really hit their stride. And in 1980 is when they start working on their like biggest album, or their highest selling album, Back in Black. And at that time, Bon Scott was still with them.
Is Thunderstruck on Back in Black?
No. No, Thunderstruck is on a later album, actually. So they start recording 1980 with Bon, but he doesn't end up seeing the end of it. So he dies before the end of it. So what happened was he passed out. He was drinking very heavily in a music club in London. He jumped into the back of a friend's car. His friend's name's Alistair Kinney. They were driving back. They got back to the house. Alistair Kinney couldn't get him out of the car, or couldn't even wake him up from what I understood. So he just left him to sleep in the car. Next day he goes out, still can't get Bon out of the car and can't wake him up at all. Gets quite concerned, drives immediately to the hospital, King's College Hospital, and Bon was pronounced dead upon arrival.
It's
of acute alcohol poisoning. Yeah.
It's the way that many of the rock and roll artists have gone.
Yeah.
The thing I find interesting is that, like, we're about to talk about Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
And so Brian came in, like, what is it, 1980 or 1981?
Yeah. He joins 1980 almost immediately, but there's a bit of a gap there.
So so Bond's with them from the beginning, and so, like, again, we say big successes between 75 and 79.
Yeah.
So Bond does a lot of that big work, but in reality, Brian Johnson has been with the band for like triple the time that Bon Scott was. Like,
he's sung some of, I would say, maybe like half the killer shit that they've done.
I think that Brian Johnson's voice sounds more high and constricted. I think Bon had a bit more gravel to it, maybe, and it felt more open. Brian's is a very interesting voice. My fact about Brian Johnson is that he was originally in a band called Geordie, as in like Geordie Shore.
Right.
And they have their version, which I do not think is the original version, but they have a version of House of the Rising Sun. And it is very good. It features, I think, a little bit of a cappella stuff going on there.
Yeah.
But it's killer. And I'm pretty sure he's the one singing on it. But anyway, so that's my...
What's interesting is that, so they ended up getting Brian Johnson for a few reasons. One of the reasons was that Bon had actually mentioned Brian to the Young Boys at some point,
right,
before he died.
Yeah,
citing how incredible he was. I think he compared him to Little Richard.
Right.
So that's it. That's interesting. They ended up getting someone that Bon really respected, and also I read that they didn't rush the decision because they didn't want to get someone who would just try and copy the way that Bond sung.
Yeah,
so they ended up going with Brian and kind of like went with someone who would sing in a different way because they wanted to respect. You don't want to get someone who's just going to imitate the last person.
Yeah,
Wolf Mother.
Well, I think that isn't it with Brian Johnson again? Like, I've picked up all this AC/DC knowledge over my life, but I can't narrow it down. I feel like I've heard him tell a story before where like he nearly missed his audition or something.
I'm not really. I haven't heard that story, but
I feel like it was him that was talking about nearly missing his audition because he was in one part of England and they were somewhere else and he had to get down there, and I think he was doing shows with another band or something like that.
Yeah, they definitely auditioned him in England. I remember that part.
Yeah, I feel like that was him that nearly missed it. Anyway, but yeah, so he joins and then he's with them until now.
Yeah, well, I mean, he joins them in 1980 and they have something of a rebirth because they go, and like I said, they were already beginning to record Back in Black. But then he comes in, they end up recording all of Back in Black, which features songs like Hell's Bells, You Shook Me All Night Long, and obviously Back in Black. And this is like the highest selling album of all time, from what I understand. Reached number 1 in the UK, number 5 in the US, and it spent 131 weeks on the Billboard 200 album chart in the US, which is like a crazy amount of time.
So nearly
just the full album stayed up
over
there.
2 years. What, 2.5 years or something?
131.
It's like two and a bit years. That's insane. So and the whole album as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Then they had a bit. It's weird because they did Back in Black, right? And it was like their highest selling album, and then they had this like weird decline where they weren't not popular. They just kind of weren't as popular immediately after one of their most popular albums. But then they released Razor's Edge, an album in the early 90s, and they became extremely popular again because that had Thunderstruck. Are You Ready? Both of those made, so Thunderstruck made number 5 and Are You Ready made number 16 on the charts. And since then, they've been touring as they were. So this group with Brian Johnson right up to about 2008.
Yes.
And they were releasing a lot of live recordings primarily. I don't know if after that. I know
they're a big touring band.
Yeah. So from then right up till 2011, that's when things started to change in terms of their lineup. And their lineup's quite different now. So Malcolm Young retired in 2014, he actually ended up dying in 2017.
Yes.
Do you know what that was about? Because
how he died?
Yeah, I read that he was quite ill. But I think
he was just ill and old because the guys are pretty old now.
Yeah, well, he was 64.
It was,
but I guess they've been drinking like crazy for
Drinking and Rocking. It was actually quite sad because like a lot of people talk about like because Malcolm was the rhythm guitarist and so he brought a lot to the music into the band. But again, people talked about the massive influence he had. So like. It was sad when he died because I think I saw a quote or interview where Angus was like, I don't know how I'll play without him kind of thing. And I was like, that's pretty brutal because like they were brothers in this band all these years.
Yeah.
And you know, that was the thing. Is one of them Vance and Young? I always forget because Vance and Young were like the huge kind of duo of Australian music.
Not that I'm
got all the
aware of,
people going.
maybe.
I feel like one of them was possibly Malcolm.
Oh,
Anyway.
So
he died in 2017.
Yeah, and then Brian Johnson ended up leaving in 2016, partway through a tour, from what I understand.
Yes.
Because he had severe hearing loss and he couldn't do it.
Yeah, they were like,
anymore.
you're going to go deaf if you keep going.
Yeah, so he had to give it up. For the rest of that tour, though, they ended up getting Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses to front.
Supposedly it was a rocking tour.
Apparently it was a rocking tour, so rocking that he is now officially, since 2016, the frontman of AC/DC.
Oh, really?
And I believe Angus wants to make an album with him. They want to make a proper album with Axl Rose as frontman, which would be incredible.
That's such a killer duet because I've heard, because I'm obviously a big Guns N' Roses fan, but I've seen many different live shows throughout the years, and especially in Axl's later years, he was not very good. But I've been told that for those recent Guns N' Roses tours that are happening, where it was Guns N' Roses back together with Slash and everything,
right? Supposedly
he smashed it again. And I heard that he was smashing it for the AC/DC shows.
Yeah.
So if he's kind of almost back to old Axl, putting him on an album with AC/DC would just like break the world of rock music.
Yeah. It'd be
too much.
Incredible.
It's too much.
I mean, they were talking about that from 2016. Hopefully that's something that's in the works because that'd be really awesome to see.
Yeah. I didn't realize it. I think like, I knew about it at the time, but I didn't realize that they were kind of locking it in.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So that's kind of the story up till now. I did miss they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2003 as well.
Yeah,
I didn't mention that, but they made that achievement amongst many others. But
all the other achievements. Can you look up Vance and Young for me? I do it on my phone, but then it'll start vibrating. Whilst you do that, I'll talk about some of the songs and the history I have behind them. Well, I guess I'll talk about all of it whilst Tim's doing this.
Vance and Young?
Yeah, like Vance is in VANCE, and then Young as Young is spelled.
Can't find anything.
On Vance and Young? Where are you just typing find?
I'm on Google.
You can't find anything about Vance and Young?
No, nothing. Yeah, it's got Vance Young, it's got all this other stuff, but it's got no. Give me another second.
Am I forgetting something? They were like, I feel like they were like the company that did like a whole bunch of John Paul Young.
You find that and you post that later on, mate.
Well, yeah.
I can't find that, sorry.
It's going to be awkward if I've gone through this episode talking about something I don't know. Mum's yelling at the thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of one thing before I talk about the good songs in that, is one of the most iconic parts, I think, of AC/DC is Angus's guitar. So Angus had a Gibson SG. It was like a red, I don't know what the color of the red was, but it's like a red with a black scratch plate. It is like, it's just, I always think about that. Now, it was one of those ones that you looked at when you were a kid and you're like, I want that. But then as I kind of got older and I was like getting ready to get guitars, I was like, I don't know if it's actually cool anymore. And because I kind of fell off from AC/DC. Once AC/DC gets you through the door, you kind of lose them at the back.
Yeah. One
guy at school got a knockoff of it. He got an Epiphone one. And it was kind of just this kind of thing in our class that there was just this random SG around. But that to me is iconic. Obviously, you've also got Angus's iconic duck step, where he moves across the stage, which I think is originally Chuck Berry's kind of move.
Yeah, yeah.
But Angus, has killed it with it. But my story that goes with talking about AC/DC songs is there's video evidence somewhere. When we were in school, obviously the song that you learn first when you get a guitar is Thunderstruck.
Yeah.
You learn it with hammer-ons, and then you find out they're picking it on the album half the time anyway. But you learn that song and you play it over and over and over. And I can still play it because it's one of the few things I remember. But like another one is Back in Black, because it's bam, 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 like Nice little line. This kid in our class, I think it was year 9 music, Alex, had his Fender.
Right.
I think it was him. It was either him or Matt. I think it might have been Alex. He got up there and he plays it, and it comes out something similar to bank. So we're all laughing because we're bad people.
Of course.
And if it was Alex that did it, that was the occasion when he picked up a guitar and threw it across the room.
Fantastic.
Whilst we were filming.
An apt reaction.
But so whenever I think of Back in Black, I think about that. Now, my favourite song, I maintain, is not a common favourite song.
Right.
My favourite song by AC/DC is You Shook Me All Night Long.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like that song.
But I don't think it's... I think up there, as we're talking about, is Highway to Hell, Thunderstruck, Back in Black. I think those are all the top ones.
Yeah.
But You Shook Me All Night Long, and it's because of the one line of she told me to come and I was already there. I just think that line's great.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's a good
I
line.
think I'm a fan of TNT.
Dynamite. Yeah.
Oi.
Yeah, a lot of the songs with the oys in it, like Dirty Deeds. Dirty Deeds,
yeah.
The breakdown of Dirty Deeds are dirty deeds and
Yeah.
they're done dirt cheap.
It is a bit silly. That's some of their earlier stuff. It is a bit silly when you compare it to some of the newer stuff.
AC/DC is fairly well known as more of the bogan style of music. You play it in pubs. You play it out the back of your ute.
Yeah.
You blare it with your Southern Cross tattoo.
But it's well known. If you put it on in any pub, everyone in there will start.
Oh, you'll
singing.
go off.
Everyone will start singing.
AC/DC speaks to the bogan in all Australians.
Oh, 100%. It'll bring it out of me every time.
If you put Thunderstruck on in a pub, whether I've had drinks or not, you better believe I'm going to be on my knees at some point hammering out the guitar riff.
Oh, Highway to Hell. People do Highway to Hell karaoke all the time. And everyone will be singing. It's a good time.
It's good music. And it is iconic, and that's why we kind of picked it, because we thought AC/DC, I feel like, is a very well-known Australian band.
Definitely.
Akadaka.
Great band.
Great
Bloody good band.
Great bunch of
one of Dad's favourites when I was growing up. AC/DC and Queen. Queen aren't Australian, though, just so everyone knows.
No, but they're bloody
just
good.
Just in case you didn't realise.
There you go. Is that all there is? Is that all there is?
There isn't
anymore.
That's a Madeline reference.
Yeah. Get on the AC/DC. There's a bit on the playlist. I think there's about 3 or 4 songs, and I think it's songs we've talked about, like Highway to Hell and stuff. You Shook Me All Night Long is definitely on there. There you go, Tim.
Yep.
You got dad advice?
I do.
You can share it?
It's incredibly relevant.
Oh.
Dear Tim and Leon, I've recently moved to a new house, renting an apartment all on my own. Of course, now the real estate for the last place are making life difficult. Saying we didn't clean enough and want to take our bond. It's so unfair. Why do they do this? We can't afford for them to take the bond. What do you think we should do? Yours in written form, Larry.
If only we could help you.
You've hit a vein. Yeah. Do you have any advice for us, Larry?
Yeah,
Because
let's flip the script here, Laz.
Yeah.
Larry, all I can say is that this is where your skills in email writing come into play. This is where you've got as per my last email. This is where you've got regards. This is where you put them all in play.
This is where remaining silent on particular things that they bring up in specific emails just to bring it up later comes in of great value.
Yep. Give them the answers they need so that if they do come back to you with something else, you then pull out the card that you've got.
Yep.
This is where you use multiple people drafting. None of this is from experience.
No. This is just like a theoretical thing.
Yeah. I know.
This is how I would theoretically handle
my
something
friend, Liam, he said, and Tim's friend, Jim.
Who happen to live together and have the exact
and
same
Elisa's
situation.
friend, Belize. That's... mate, what you've got to do is just remember, you haven't done anything wrong, have you?
No.
And they're just out. Some of them are just out to get you, man.
Mate. No, look. At the end of the day, we all know what real estate agents are like, don't we? It's not a bloody comment on you.
No.
You stay true to yourself. You stay bloody true. Be good.
True north.
Be good to yourself.
Be well in yourself.
Just collate your documents. collate your fucking documents.
You know
is
all
what I
those
have to
times when
say.
you ask your dad for advice and he just goes, just collate your documents, mate.
Yeah, nah, mate, go in there and collate your documents.
Get out of my face and collate your documents. Yeah, Larry, we can't help you.
No.
Give us about a week. We might be able to.
Oh, God,
Legally,
I hope so.
I can't help you right now.
God, I hope so.
We can't release this until after.
Yeah,
Um,
they might use it as evidence.
Tim, there was... When I said release it, reminded me of something, and I can't tell you what it is, so it's fucking a moot point, isn't it?
Don't know why you brought it up.
Neither do I. So yes, it's been a laugh talking about Akadaka, ABCD, if you will, the Sesame Street takeoff that they have.
EFG.
So Tim, this week I'll make a podcast recommendation to you.
Oh, okay.
No bias.
No, I imagine.
Would I
this
come
is-
here with a bias?
Imagine you're coming to suggest something to us that you've got no connection to whatsoever.
No. Why would
Yeah.
I use this platform that we have nurtured and nourished to launch another platform?
I'm
Tim?
not sure.
I'm not that kind of guy.
Yeah,
but if I
that'd be-
was that kind of guy,
Theoretically speaking.
I have started many months ago. It's taken me a long time to sort things out. I started a podcast with John Paul, who you'll all remember from our best performing episode of all time, the Cooper's Brewery episode.
And he was on the Christmas episode last year. Last year?
Was that
the
last
year
year or
before?
the year before? I think it was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
So John Paul, friend of the podcast, him and I have started a podcast called Do It for the Vine. It is a Vine review and appreciation podcast, or as John Paul says, appreciation. And it will be launching very momentarily.
So momentarily you would not even believe
As
it.
of just before this, I've set up the Gmail, the Twitter, the Facebook. Now, the Twitter and the Facebook, turns out, Do It for the Vine pod is too long. And Do It for the Vine and all the numbers you can go with it has obviously been taken.
Naturally.
So the ats for Twitter and Facebook are For the Vine pod.
For the Vine.
For the Vine pod.
Yeah.
And there will be a YouTube as well that'll go with it because we want to have a YouTube playlist. Anyway, some of you have heard it already. Some of you have tested it. You'll download it again. You will.
Yeah.
And
Get on it.
and the rest of us will get onto it. Talking about our listeners, Patreon, we are getting the stickers and stuff out, but again, due to circumstances,
Just give us a second to breathe here, will ya? No, we do apologise.
Similar to what Larry was talking about, but in no connection to us. It's been trying times.
Oh, mate. What Larry's talking about is like literally scratching the surface of bullshit that's going on at the moment.
Nothing to do with us. Nothing to do with us. So we're getting them out. Join our Patreon. It's great fun. I think that's everything. I really do feel like there was something else I was going to mention. I just can't fucking remember it.
Yeah, well, you'll remember it later, won't you?
Yeah, Vance and Young, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's everything. Thanks as always to Teylor Smirl for our wonderful cover art.
Yeah, and to Curtis Fernance of Fern Tree Music. I bet he could play the shit out of some AC/DC.
I bet you he loves a bit of Akadaka.
Yeah, he would. He'd know. He'd be able to play that.
He gets it.
So cheers for that, Curtis.
And I think that's everything. Find us on all social medias and everything. Yeah, G'day Podcast. Share an episode with a friend. Listen to the show. Download it 20 times. I don't care. No, I do care.
Yeah.
I'd prefer you do that.
Please do those things.
Please do that. That's good. As always, yeah, g'day, Tim.
Yeah, g'day, Leon.
Yeah, g'day, everyone.
Yeah, g'day, everyone. Catches on the flippity flop.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.